The Rise and Fall of Twitter, a Tech Autopsy. In October 2022, Elon Musk bought Twitter for $44 billion. 2 years later, the platform's valuation had collapsed by over 70%. But here's what most people missed: Twitter didn't fail because Musk took over. Twitter failed because it never figured out what it actually was, and when Musk arrived, he exposed a company built on 17 years of strategic confusion. Let's go back to February 2006. Jack Dorsey, then an undergraduate, was working at Odeo, a podcasting company that was already dying. In a brainstorming session, Dorsey pitched a radical idea: what if you could send status updates via SMS text message to a small group of people? The code name was twttr, inspired by Flickr, and built to fit SMS shortcodes, which were 5 characters long. On March 21, 2006, Dorsey posted the first message: "Just setting up my twttr." The product launched publicly on July 15, 2006. It was meant to be simple. Text a number. Your status appears. Done. But within months, something unexpected happened. People weren't using it to update their friends. They were using it to break news. By October 2006, Evan Williams, Biz Stone, and Jack Dorsey bought out Odeo and spun off Twitter as its own company in April 2007. Williams later admitted the central problem in a 2013 interview: with Twitter, it wasn't clear what it is. They called it a social network. They called it microblogging. But it was neither. It was replacing nothing, so nobody knew what it was for. Then, in 2007, something crystallized the platform's real purpose. Chris Messina introduced the hashtag symbol used to categorize conversations. This wasn't a feature Twitter designed. It was invented by users. And when Messina pitched it to Twitter executives, they almost rejected it. They thought hashtags looked ugly. But users had already decided: hashtags turned Twitter into an information network, not a social network. This is where the story gets critical. Twitter went public in November 2013. By then, the company had convinced Wall Street it was a media company. But internally, executives still didn't have consensus on what Twitter was. They had built the infrastructure of an information network but were selling it like a social platform. For 16 years, Twitter optimized for engagement metrics, retweets, likes, replies, not for information accuracy or utility. The algorithm amplified whatever made people click, which meant outrage, conspiracy, and conflict systematically spread faster than anything else. The company knew this. Internal research documented it. But changing the algorithm meant losing engagement numbers, which meant stock price would fall. So Twitter never changed course. Here's the detail that reframes everything: Twitter's real problem wasn't technical incompetence. It was architectural inevitability. Evan Williams had been right in 2013, Twitter was an information network, not a social network. But information networks and social networks have opposite incentive structures. Social networks profit when people spend time on the platform. Information networks profit when information reaches the right people, as accurately as possible, as quickly as possible. The first optimizes for engagement time. The second optimizes for signal-to-noise ratio. Twitter chose engagement time. For its entire public life, Twitter fought against its own nature. It built features for social connection, verified accounts, follower counts, quote tweets, while the network's actual behavior was purely informational. The company kept trying to be Facebook with shorter posts. But it was never Facebook. It was a wire service that ran on chaos. When Elon Musk took over in October 2022, he didn't create Twitter's crisis. He inherited a company that had spent 17 years compressing a fundamental contradiction into its infrastructure. Musk's decisions, removing content moderation, firing 80% of staff, changing the verification system, then renaming it to X, these weren't the death blows. They were the final cascade in a system that was already failing. The platform's collapse accelerated because Musk removed the one thing holding the contradiction together: institutional credibility. Without trust in the institution, the network had nothing left. The real lesson here isn't about billionaires or social media or even Twitter specifically. It's about products built on a fundamental misunderstanding of what they are. When you build infrastructure for one purpose but optimize for another, you don't get to live in that contradiction forever. Eventually, the gap between what you are and what you pretend to be becomes your vulnerability. Jack Dorsey's 140-character status update was supposed to be inconsequential, a chirp, he said, like birds. But the world turned it into something else entirely. And instead of accepting what it had become, Twitter spent 2 decades fighting its own users over what it was supposed to be. That's not a tragedy of incompetence. It's a tragedy of refusal.